Welcome to the Can You Even podcast, a space where real life stories prove that no matter what life throws your way, you can. I'm your host, Candisse McCormick, and as someone living with spinal muscular atrophy, I've faced my own share of challenges, but I've learned that with the right mindset, anything is possible. On this podcast, I have the privilege of sharing stories from incredible people who have faced life's twists and turns, overcome challenges, and found their own version of you can. These conversations are all about finding strength, hope, and purpose, even in the hardest moments. So get comfy, turn up the volume, and get ready, because these stories might just shift your perspective in a way you never saw coming. Hello, and welcome back to the Can You Even podcast, where we are here to share stories from amazing people about hard times and how they overcame it. I'm very excited to introduce my next guest, Carissa Carleton. From what I've known about her, she tells a really cool story that I think is going to inspire a lot of you. But with that being said, I'm going to let Carissa introduce herself. So welcome, and tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate having this platform to be able to share about my experiences and hope that it will resonate with some others and give them some good feelings and just someone to relate to. So that's why I'm here, and I appreciate you doing that. I'm Carissa, and I was diagnosed as an adult as autistic and ADHD. And I'm here to talk about my experiences and kind of how that diagnosis really did change my life, because it made so much of my life make sense when it just didn't beforehand. So that's
That is so funny that you say that because I have people, a lot of different people in my life. My brother, he was diagnosed very young with like ADHD. Very much struggled through school and just didn't with learning things and stuff. And then as an adult, I became his guardian. I was like, what is it called for a second there? I became his guardian, and through that process, I've actually learned a lot. They actually then, as a 30-some-year-old adult, said he's on the autism scale. And even for me with him, I was like, this makes so much more sense for him, right? So that's very interesting. So growing up, like you said, you didn't get your diagnosis until you were an adult. So if you're comfortable, can you share a little bit about like growing up, maybe like what you noticed if you had those struggles, and then share a little bit about getting that diagnosis as an adult and how you went about it?
It's funny you mentioned that your brother was diagnosed with ADHD when he was young, but when I was young, it wasn't something girls were typically diagnosed with. They're typically overlooked in that aspect. Same with autism as well. But I actually, just a couple weeks ago, my parents found some old report cards that I had from junior kindergarten all the way up to grade 3, I believe it was. And I read all the comments, and every single report card said she needs to try harder to pay attention. But ADHD was never a consideration for a girl at the time.
Right.
So it was more so my problem that I just chose not to
It's
try.
almost like they like stereotype girls to be like, oh yeah, they're chatty and flighty, and like, why couldn't we have a diagnosis? Like that's always been fascinating to me because I feel like, again, I've known a lot of women now in their adulthood that are getting diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm like, this explains so much about your whole life, but you're just so overlooked, and that's really kind of disheartening because if you look back on your school years and report cards like that, it could have been a very different path for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so it was really eye-opening, and that was just, like I say, a couple weeks ago. So just reading that and seeing, and I had a whole other idea. I thought I was very studious, and just especially
Mm.
in the younger years, I rebelled a bit in high school, but in the younger years, I thought that I was really paying attention and doing my work, and the only thing I knew about was that my parents were always told that I was too much of a perfectionist, and I took too long to do things, and I shouldn't care so much and just do it and just get it done and don't worry if it's perfect. And so I knew that part of it, but I didn't know that there was this theme of not paying attention.
Right.
And yeah, so I actually, as an adult, was diagnosed with ADHD first, and it came about because I I was tired. I was just tired all the time, and my My doctor at the time thought maybe you have chronic fatigue. Let's give you some stimulants and see what that does. And I started taking ADHD medication as a
Okay.
stimulant. First of all, it made me just tired at first for the first month trying to get used to it. But what I did notice, I sat down and I was able to write an email from start to finish. And I thought, this is strange. I've never done that before. What's that all about? It blew me away for some reason that I was able to write this email. I just started, I think I maybe talked to my brother about it, and he kind of led me down for me to explore ADHD path. And then I brought up
Mhm.
my doctor, and it kind of snowballed from there. And then yeah, found out that I had ADHD. Yeah. And I thought it was so strange that there weren't all these, almost picture it kind of visually where there are just like bubbles of thoughts that
Okay.
are floating all around. And I'm trying to grab one and I'm trying to grab one, but they're always kind of there's so many happening at the same time. And trying to stick to a thought or follow a thought. And also my brain processes, I've learned more recently, very quickly, so it goes down so many paths so quickly that I can't possibly retrace those steps. But when I started taking that medication, I said, "There's only one bubble. What do I what do I do? There's only one bubble. This is unfamiliar, and it actually didn't feel like myself for a long time."
That's very interesting because, as someone like, not that I'm a doctor, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure I don't have ADHD. I can very easily focus and I can like really multitask. And I've had people that have worked with me in the past, and I would always be like, what do you mean you can't do this at the same time? And they're like, well, no, that's like overwhelm and whatever. But like something as simple as just being able to sit down and write that email is interesting, like, to know that you weren't able to do something that did you notice that, like, part of it was just, like, one, that you could focus, but also, like, it lowered your perfectionism task? Like, you felt more confident in that moment because you weren't thinking all the different thoughts potentially?
Think so. I actually felt probably less confident because I didn't have the comfort of all of my thought bubbles happening at the same time.
Okay,
So it took a couple years to get used to that. And
that's
to be able to
interesting.
stay on one track, and I still can't magically stay on one track, but it just allows me, it almost, it's almost like steroids, right? Like it kind of
Mhm.
just bumps up my strength to be able to do that, but it's still a
Right.
huge effort to be able to do it. But
Okay.
yeah, so I still do kind of go off on a lot of tangents and get distracted easily, but and still do, kind of dopamine seek throughout the day and all
Right.
kinds of things, but it's definitely less profound while my medication's active.
Interesting. So, was there, like, one I feel like I'm not gonna say I know this answer, but I think it's very open-ended. Was there, like, a real moment where you like, what made you go to the doctor? Was there, like, a key pinpoint moment where you just were like, other than just being tired? Like, were you just like, "I am tired," and, like, was there other factors that you now realize are connected to the ADHD that made you reach out for help with your doctor?
Probably. I mean, I was exhausted, tired, falling asleep in the
Mm,
waiting room tired, but I think that did relate to ADHD because I tend to take a lot on at the same time. A
interesting.
lot, a lot, a lot at the same time, and I think I just burnt myself out. And so it really was a result of ADHD, I believe,
Yeah.
that led me to that level of fatigue to then seek out, thinking that there's nothing else going on. Like, why am I so fatigued? Right? That's all I
Right.
could, and not even attributing it to all
I
that.
think that's really helpful to know though. Like, I think one of my previous guests, we just talked about how like we kind of grew up in this thing of like do more, do more, do more. And so like if you aren't busy, you don't know like how to act. And so in that we get to this fatigue, but like we almost just slough it off as like, oh, I just didn't get a good night's sleep or, and really there's probably lots of people that might hear this podcast and be like, I'm tired all the time too. And like I can get a good 8 hours of sleep and still wake up tired. And so maybe that's just something that people, you know, don't feel like was there any shame and did you ever feel shame in going to your doctor to be like, I'm tired all the time. What's wrong with me? Because I feel like a lot of people live in "Well, I can't go to the doctor and complain that I'm tired." You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. No, I think, and maybe that's the autistic side coming out where things just feel matter of fact. And that's kind of,
Mm,
I feel like that's the most rational thing to do. feeling uncharacteristically tired, so let's just go figure this out.
They'll figure it out.
And the figure it out part, because I just am inclined to want to solve problems. That's just
Who you
what
are.
I do. So
Yeah.
it's always
Yeah.
interesting to me too.
Yeah.
Look into this and figure this.
I can relate to that because I'm like, I want to know why. Why do I feel like there's sometimes it's like not beneficial. Like when I Google doctor myself, I probably am not very good at it sometimes. But there's moments where I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then I will go and ask the professionals for real help. But yeah. So from your ADHD diagnosis, how did you then go and find out like you also have the autism diagnosis?
So that kind of kicked off an intense interest in psychology and neurology, and I just kind of
Mm.
dove into those topics and would stay up all night reading about it and just further and further and further. And I can't even remember how it came about. My it's interesting. So I don't know if you ever saw the show Atypical.
No, I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Okay. So my oldest daughter said to me one day, we were watching it, and she said, "Do you think you might be autistic?" Like, I kind of see
Mm.
similarities, and that it wasn't an autistic actor; it was someone playing an autistic person. And I didn't see myself at all. But she said, "I don't know." And then I kept. There were I just can't remember specifically, but around that time there were a few other circumstances that kind of led me toward that, or different things that's, people saying things that seemed that way. And I thought, that's interesting. Why don't I, explore this a little bit? And with my interest in looking into all that kind of stuff anyway, I started doing, random online quizzes and things like that. And then just reading and reading and reading, and actually seeing myself in that, and joining different Facebook groups, which
Mm.
actually huge. I just joined as an observer, just to see, okay, how I'm really intrigued with how people live their lives and different perspectives and all that kind of stuff and different experiences. And so I just kind of sat back and just read different experiences and different questions people are having and their responses to the questions and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, wow, I really see myself here. But then as an adult, there's no medical coverage for that kind of evaluation. But I was very fixated on it, and my husband encouraged me. He said, just go do it then.
Yeah.
And I fully support self-diagnosis because it is so inaccessible. Diagnosis and like the evaluation is so inaccessible to so many people because
Right.
it's very expensive. Me personally, I needed to have that kind of finite explanation. Like, I just couldn't. I'm not the type who can self-diagnose. I need to actually go through the rigor of all of it,
Right.
and have a professional say, yes, this is this. So I ended up doing that and seeking out a professional to conduct the evaluations.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that as an adult, there was no coverage to get that testing done. So that's very interesting as well. Because, yeah, like I said, I guess I mentioned my brother. He, again, grew up all this time with ADHD, and that was his diagnosis. And then we actually were going through a hard time. And so we were seeing a psychologist, and he was the one that was like, well, you need to understand that with him being on the autistic scale. And I was like, what? Well, back up here. And he did ask like if we wanted to go through that, but he did say, one, for my brother, I don't know anything about the spectrum, so I won't. It wouldn't impact him knowing where he is on the spectrum, how he lives his life. He has supportive roommates and stuff. So I'm like, for him, it wouldn't matter. But I could see for someone like yourself, who we'll get into this next, is in the construction industry and has children and lives a very, what's the word I'm looking for? I hate the word normal, but
I
that's
know, I
what
know.
my brain's going. A very like normal everyday life where most people probably who meet you have no idea. I could see how that would be important to you, because then it almost gives you like this like instruction manual of ways to make your life better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny that you referred to it as that, because that's how I live my life, and that's how I've always lived my life. I've always come up with instruction manuals for different situations. I have to observe social situation. I take all that information in, then I file it away, and then I have to recall the file. And that's kind of how it works. I have to, kind of dissect all of it. And wait, when they said that, then they walked away. Okay, so then in that situation, then this, then, but it's all just, it's hard for me to apply those when it's not the exact situation I've seen. So it's like
Right.
I can pull pieces and pieces and pieces, and sometimes I can do that, but I've always had, my life is a filed away instruction manual. And like you said, most people wouldn't realize when they meet me, but like we're on a video, you can't see, but I stim with my hands absolutely constantly like this, and that's what I'm doing down in my lap right now, because so in person it's a little bit different,
And I
but
think that's probably, again, more so individual. Me, I wouldn't notice that. Maybe it's because of my brother. I just ignore little things like that. But I think some people will notice it and some people wouldn't. Right. So I mentioned a little bit about how, like, what really fascinates me about your story right now is that not only do you have these diagnoses, but you are also a woman in the construction industry, which I think, hell yeah, good for you. That's awesome. But I also think being a woman in the construction industry is one hurdle. Having these diagnoses is a whole nother ballgame, really. And so, were you in the industry before your diagnosis?
yes. So it's
Okay.
something I've always, always, always been interested in.
Okay.
And I remember being just a really young child, so probably, I don't know, grade 1 or 2 or something, and I would draw floor plans with sidewalk chalk, and I always said to my friends on the street that, let's draw houses," and they draw the outside of a house, and I'm like,
Like a
"No,
square
that's
box
not
with
what
a
I mean." Yeah.
triangle.
Yeah, I'm like, "No."
Here's
Like,
this three-dimensional.
yeah, but no one ever told me what they were. I didn't have a name for it. It was just a house, and I don't even know why I started mapping things out that way, but that's what I did, and I always, always, always did that. And I got a subscription to Architectural Digest, and I would then, went from drawing the floor plans to then constructing models out of cardboard boxes and things like that. It just was always part of my life. Or I'd go, and I'd build a whole neighborhood too. I had my
Oh,
construction trucks in the dirt behind my house, and I would build with my construction trucks, build the roads and all that stuff. And that's just, I've always,
that was so cool. Like me, I played with Barbies and was not. I just like dressed them and redressed them. Like I didn't really like act out anything. And you're building like whole mini communities in your backyard. That's very cool. Okay, so then knowing that, did you like go into like schooling at like university, college, anything like that as you went down the levels of school?
yeah. So like I said, I kind of rebelled in high school, didn't exactly take all the courses that I needed to take, and didn't
Okay.
really put enough attention into the courses that I should be putting attention into. But um I was going to get an English degree. And then at kind of the last minute, mom happened to read something, I think in the paper maybe, about a college program with architectural technology. And I thought, well, like,
Oh,
yeah, why don't I try that instead? I'll give that a try. So I went, that's actually where I met my husband, because he was in the program as
cool.
well. But,
Okay.
sorry, I was going to get into a different story about the awkward meeting with him. But uh, I was there for a couple years, and then I realized that it was so prescriptive. I didn't get to use my own imagination into things. It was very,
Wow.
I mean, and then turns out that's, real life. And so I thought, let's just keep that as my own interest and not pursue design as my career.
Okay.
I wanted to be in the industry still, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I was really interested in, I've always liked all kinds of different maths and sciences. And I really liked this one civil engineering course I was taking. And so then but I ended up, for some reason, that because it had something to do with like water flow or wastewater flow or something, that
Okay.
then led me into switching to an environmental technology program,
Okay.
which then through that, I found there was the building side of things, right? And all of the sustainability side of things with the
Mm,
built environment. So I ended up, when I finished that program, went directly to work for a firm doing building energy modeling. And then it just kind of took off from there.
that is very cool. I feel like a lot of people, I think it goes unspoken a lot of times with the autism diagnosis. I bet you were like top of class because when you find something that you really are interested in, like learning about it is joyful and fulfills you. Whereas like in high school when you didn't know what you wanted to do, it was probably the school was probably like your least favorite place to be because you had to follow what other people were telling you to learn about and you didn't have a passion for that. So I think like do you notice that like not to say that it was easy, but like all of this education in this industry that you've now taken almost came to you very naturally?
Yeah, I think so. It's
Yeah.
just right what I wanted to do. But I mean, even in high school, I've always loved learning and I just want to learn more and more and more and more all the time. Like my brain is always satiated.
Right.
But it's yeah, but high school was more of a social reason to step back from studying. It was because I never understood where I fit into
Fair.
anything ever. And then I remember it that people started looking to me for answers or things or said, "Oh, we'll ask her, she's smart." And then that felt wrong in a way. No, it felt wrong. I thought, "Don't no, I'm not." And I was all defensive. "No, I'm not," because I thought it made me different, and I already felt different. And so I just did what I thought I should do, skip class and failed
Right.
with my best subjects and that kind of thing, just to try to fit in, but at the same time, not understanding how to fit in. Like I changed, but I dressed interestingly at the first couple years of high school, but then I
Really,
started,
who doesn't?
yeah. But then I started to mimic the style of everyone else, and all of a sudden I was
Mhm.
included. But I still didn't know. I don't know how to approach a group of people to this day. I have no idea how to have a group conversation, I have absolutely no idea. I've always avoided all the parents that drop off at school, and when my
Okay.
kids were in school, they're not anymore. But and
What
yeah,
about when it's in relation to the construction industry? Do you
yeah,
feel
it's different.
Yeah.
Also, in the autism space, it's different.
Mhm.
So I'm on the board of directors for an autism organization,
Okay.
a good one, and because there's a lot of
Yep.
yeah, conflict out there in that world. But
Yes.
um, I went out to a conference or to a summit with that organization a couple years ago, and I've never felt, even when I've been to construction conferences and things like that, I've never felt so at peace and at home there and just accepted in a space, just not judged whatsoever. And I've never felt that anywhere. It was really interesting. But I've loved the learning aspect of construction conferences or group events and things like that. But all of my life, I avoid the breaks, the lunch
Right.
break, the coffee break. All of a sudden, I'm busy. I have to do something because I have absolutely no idea what happens now. Yeah, so I would kind of just escape.
Yeah, that's fair and very interesting. I can relate to the part of like you found your community and you just felt like at peace there. I like growing up with my spinal muscular atrophy. It's a type of muscular dystrophy, and I remember like when I was younger, my parents did a lot. I don't like I remember it, but I don't know that it impacted me. But then as like a late teen or young adult, I got back into it and I felt the exact same way. So I can totally understand. You're like, I don't have to explain this like everyday thing to somebody else or like how I'm feeling or whatever. And they also just like welcome you in a different way. It's almost like they know that you're probably feeling the same way they're feeling. So they're just like, oh hey. So
Yeah.
takes away the awkwardness for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Think that I've always kind of gravitated to whoever doesn't feel like they fit in for whatever reason,
mm,
probably because of my own reasons,
right.
right? So I feel like, oh, I want to give you somewhere to fit in, and maybe we can connect because we both don't fit in, and that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. And I think like lots of people are like that when they can be aware of it. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things you talked about is that like your experience of these feelings of being different, especially in the construction field, I'm assuming the undermined and underappreciated. You said that that really fueled you to achieve your dreams and goals. So can you maybe share about like what some of those dreams and goals were and or are? Because I don't know if you achieved them yet. And then just a little bit like what made you feel that way and how did you overcome those feelings?
I guess I'll never necessarily reach goals because I just tend to set more goals. So
Mhm.
it's but my kind of overall lifestyle is to just continually learn and improve, and that's what I want to do. And I mean, I think especially I mean, not knowing my neurodivergence is when I started in the construction industry, I
Right.
never really understood why it was so difficult for me to try to have a conversation with somebody. Or when I first started working, I had to write down a script when I had to make a phone call because I wouldn't have a clue what to say. I would freeze up if I got on the phone. So I wrote it down and I would read it very kind of robotically, like an AI bot these days, just to get through a phone call. If it goes this way, then this, and this way, then this, and I had it all mapped out, and let's figure this out. And then when I'm done the call, just be able
Yeah.
to breathe again. But I never understood why it was so hard for me to try to connect to people, before, after a meeting, people are all mingling, and I had no idea. I still have absolutely no idea how that works. But being female also, which obviously I did know at the time, it I was constantly undermined. And so, I mean, I remember sitting in one meeting in particular, and this isn't just a one off thing, this is kind of
Right.
a theme, but I distinctly remember one meeting where uh, a man in the meeting said, "And what would you know, girl?" And my brain went on. So I responded with a very technical, like informed answer, and he just kind of shut up and sat back. And I wasn't snarky about it. I just kind of like, here's what I know. But then I realized from that point on that being female in that industry, you have to know more than any man in the industry to be taken seriously. As
Yeah.
soon as you don't know something or you make one little mistake, well, it's because you shouldn't be here. You're female. Why are you even here? But a man is able to make mistakes and learn and ask for advice and grow and things like that. But I had to come out with my A game every single time,
Right.
or else I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah. I weirdly think like just the little bit that I know from the autism spectrum, I feel like this was like a secret tool in your tool belt because
Yeah,
you will know everything more than anybody else. Because the man in the room, it probably like took the first basic answer but doesn't know the why behind it, and you knew the why behind it and the other 5 whys behind that one, so I feel like it probably served you, even
it's
though once you figured out that was part of how you work, right? Because you
yeah,
said you started in the industry before knowing your diagnosis.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually funny because when you said that, like I remember being on some construction teams bidding for jobs, and we had to come up with a design and kind of and put together a bidding package and that kind of thing. Well, I would have read the 400-page RFP and memorized everything that was in it, every specification that was in it. I knew exactly what we needed to do, exactly what we're looking for, but I didn't. I was still so unsure. I'm
Mm,
always so unsure of myself that I be hesitant to say. Like I remember it coming up in meetings saying, "Oh, what do they want for this? Or what do they want for that? Okay, let's look it up." And I'm sitting there going, I know, but I don't want to say it in case I'm wrong because then I'm wrong and I
mm.
don't know anything and I've devalued myself again or discredited myself again. So I wouldn't say anything, but it's funny that I would sit there having
You would know the answer. Yeah. That must be, like, a really difficult thing to deal with because, like, me, I would if I was in the room with you, I would be like, "Ask Carissa, she probably read the whole report." You know what I mean? Like, I think it's fascinating that minds can work. I am very much not that person. I'm, like, either I want, like, the summarized version of the report, or I will figure it out when it goes wrong. Like, I often joke and say to people, like, I'm like MacGyver. Like, I'm not gonna figure out what could go wrong. I'm just gonna wait for it to go wrong, and then in the moment, I'm very quick thinking. I'm very resourceful. I don't know if that is growing up with like a physical disability, whereas I feel like your brain is like, no, I'm gonna think of all the ways this could go wrong and have a solution
it does.
ready to go. So yeah.
Yeah, that's actually my husband has all kinds of business ideas, all kinds of ideas all the
Mm,
time. He's always thinking, and the world
that's
could do
me.
this or we could do that, and and he will come to me with an idea and I'll sit there and it's like in a millisecond. My brain goes out in this big spider web and it analyzes like how could this go and what would happen and there are the roadblocks and this. Then I tell him, okay, well, these are the things I think would go right with it, but these are the things that could stand in the way, blah, 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 blah. But when we started our most recent business, when he came to me with that idea, um, I just, did and I was like, yes, like just yes. And
I'm
that's
like
never.
jealous of that way to think because I'm like, I'm your husband. My friends bug me and say they're like, you're like a continuous generator of business ideas. But I'm like, yeah, I'm a creator of the idea, but I create nothing goes into execution. I shouldn't say nothing. A few have come to
No, but yeah.
execution, but like but I'm not that person that will figure out like what will work, what won't. So that's very cool.
And that's my husband and I. Like, he's the idea generator, and then I'm the one who goes, "Okay, let's make this happen. How do we do it?" So,
That's so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So before we dive into your business fully, so you then get your diagnosis in the industry, and then did it lead you like fully down a different path than you expected? Like you're still in the industry, obviously, with your business,
Mhm.
but like, did you change jobs? Like when you say like it fueled you to achieve your goals and dreams, what did that really look
At the time, like, I always thought that to be successful meant to climb the ladder.
like? Mm,
And so that I was just a very, it's like, okay, so I just go linear and
mhm.
that's being successful. But that actually led me into, so this is the time where I was fully burnt out, one of the times. But so we had just had our third child,
Okay.
and I'm the type of, like, I'm still working after like the baby's born, and then I'm like, well, I got to finish this, or like
Right.
a meeting or something. And so my son had just been born, and my husband had this idea at the time. We were living in Ontario, and he had an idea for, he said, what's really lacking in this area is like maternity clothing and maternity products. And so maybe there's an opportunity there. So we I didn't ever take a full leave from work. Like, I
Mm,
still worked part-time, but and, like, only did that for, like, a few months,
like
and then
behind the
uh,
scenes, kind of.
yeah, and then, like, went back full-time after a few months, we had a an 11, our oldest would have been 11-year-old who was competitive swimmer. Like, we're traveling, like,
Okay.
12 weekends, extended weekends a year. Like, it was really busy. And then we had a 1-year-old and a newborn, almost 12 months apart, like, just over 12 months
Yeah.
apart. And we were renovating our house also, but ourselves. And we didn't have a kitchen. Yeah. And I was still working. And then we decided we'd open a maternity store at the same time. So this is where the burnout comes from, that I
Yeah.
connect the dots with at the time. And so we opened a brick and mortar store and had an online store as well. And then that was getting really busy. But then at the same time, the firm that I worked for in the construction industry, it was being acquired by another firm, and we needed to. We were being split off from the company we
Okay.
were part of. Our division was being split off, so we need to establish ourselves as our own brand identity.
Okay.
My boss at the time said, "Well, you just did that with the store. Why don't you figure it out?" And so, I mean, not that he didn't do anything, but I figured out. He's like, you do all the operations, like you figure out how
Okay.
this works and how our systems are going to work. And now we have all these rigid accounting policies and practices from our parent
Mhm.
company in case they want to go public or whatever. Like, we just want to be established for that. And I didn't know anything about accounting. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he said, here, go take this course. Like, I'll send you
Okay.
to take this course, and you can learn, basically what you need to know of what accounting is, and
Right.
all that. And I loved it because I love a new challenge, and that's my ADHD side going, yay, something new, this is so exciting.
Right.
And so then I thought I actually had the most fun trying to solve that problem because it was so intense, and I just worked like around the clock and trying to put those pieces together, and how is this all going to work with this, and this satisfy that, and that flow with that, and this. And so I ended up on the business side of things instead of the construction
Okay.
consulting side of things.
Yeah.
And that led me to then get an MBA, because I'm like, well, like, now I love business too, so I'm going to go do that. And then while we moved across the country,
Right.
yeah, and we sold our store because it really wasn't where my passion was, but I loved the establishment of it, and I had a lot of ideas with it, but it was too many things going on all at the same time. So we did end up selling after 4 or 5 years. Yeah, so we moved across the country when I was doing my MBA, and so that kind of led me into more of a business side of things. And that's when I ended up on a couple of boards of directors, because I was interested in. I actually did my master's thesis on inclusivity in corporate governance, and kind of the different ways that can look, like different things that aren't typically considered. in terms of inclusivity and things like that. So,
You must be thrilled with what's going on in the government, right?
oh man,
We won't go down that rabbit hole. We'll never come back. But
yeah, no kidding. But yeah, that led me into that, into like in the world of corporate governance. And then I ended up as a business coach for, so business side for construction companies. So it kind of brought it all together,
yeah,
which was really cool. But yeah, then my husband came up with this idea for ours, and that's where we've been
that is very
focused.
cool. And I think like I'm a big believer in like the universe that brings you down the path that you
Yes.
need to go down. And I think that like again, you could have been in your adult life kind of struggling through feeling burnt out, tired, and not gone to your doctor and not gone down the path of getting these diagnoses. But then you did, and it took you down a completely different path where now it's like really speaking to like your, what am I trying to say here? Your like passion, your skill set, the way your mind works. It's not easy being a business owner. I ran a event company for like 10 years, and that's a whole nother story for another day. But yeah, so I think like this is really cool. And so that led you, like you said, to you and your husband started this subscription based home maintenance business called Squad Life.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm gonna go and look it up. And then like, no, I'm not gonna go look it up. I'll look it up after because I wanted to just see how you shared that. How did you come up with the idea? Well, your husband, I guess.
Yeah.
What does it offer? I think it sounds like a genius idea.
Yeah, and I didn't like come here to be promotional about it, or but
Definitely come and
yeah,
be promotional.
but like I'm the worst salesperson. I would just say, here, just have it all for free. It's fine. I don't want to try to sell you anything.
Like I had a good time putting it together for you, so here you go.
Yeah. But yeah, my husband thought of it because he was working in the warranty department for a home builder, and he saw
Okay.
all these issues coming up that would get warranty calls, and he's like, these shouldn't happen. They're all, 95% of this specific issue is preventable. And, like so
Uh,
many things are preventable. And so it caused so much more extra money, so much extra headache for the homeowner. And so he said, we really need to get ahead of that and do preventative maintenance. Like
right.
we maintain our cars. We know we need an oil change. We know when we need our brakes done, and we need new tires and all kinds of things. And then
Yeah.
we go to sell our car and we present our maintenance records to show, okay, look, we've been maintaining our car, so I can justify the value of the car. But
Right.
we don't do that with our house. We just kind of sit around till something goes wrong, and then we're like, uh-oh, what do we do now? Not to say we don't do anything, but we're still learning the
They're
whole
almost like the pretty things. Like we might repaint or, like the vanity part of it, but we don't. My dad works in like the plumbing and heating industry. So I'm like, I
yeah,
weirdly know the inside of that. Like
yeah.
people don't know, like the people that don't know you have to change your furnace filter regularly is mind blowing. And then like the terrible things that can happen if you don't, right? Like, yeah. So I definitely, you're right. This was a major gap in this industry that was needing to be filled.
Yeah, and I feel like the industry really needs a shift that way to when we purchase a home, say, okay, well, where are your maintenance records? Like, I want to know that this home's been maintained. I'm definitely not devaluing a home inspection. I think that's definitely valuable
Totally.
to get and inspect everything, but it's telling you where you're at one point in time, which it can identify issues, and it can identify things that are, even to say they're not concerns, but
Right.
also is one point in time, and you don't know if they were, for instance, changing their furnace filter.
Right.
So, or cleaning like maintaining certain things with the appliances, like the fridge condenser coil. Well, I don't know now that this fridge's lifespan is going to be half of what it should be, right? We
Right.
don't know what has happened over time. So,
Well, and you mentioned like home inspections. It's almost like if you do this maintenance stuff, you know that you're going to get a glowing home inspection, which is
yeah,
actually just going to benefit you when you're trying to sell your home.
yeah,
And the other thing about it is my friend just bought a townhouse last year and home inspection went glowingly. There was a few little, few things that needed to be fixed or whatever, but 6 months after there was like a leak and a this. And there's some things that like a home inspection just will miss. Like it's not a fault of anybody. It's just
exactly.
here it was good and now it is not. But if you're doing your regular home maintenance,
Hmm.
you might be able to catch those issues before they become a massive problem.
Exactly. That's what our goal is. So we do quarterly, like seasonal visits, and we have different items that we check or maintain at each visit. But at least we're there to say, oh, you know what? This could become an issue, or this is becoming an issue. Let's correct that before it actually causes a massive problem, right? And then, you don't want to get into insurance claims and all kinds of things when there was something that could be preventable. You just didn't know it was happening.
Exactly.
And nobody has a time to go around the house with a fine-tooth comb and keep an
Or
eye
it doesn't just, like, maybe I have the time, but I don't have a clue what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Looks like it's working to me,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And is
That's
everyone
why
climbing in the attic? Like, no.
No, definitely not doing that.
Yeah, it's
No, like, that's such a great idea, and it's really interesting how you got to this point in your life of starting this business, serving a purpose, but, like, it wasn't an easy path for you to get there. But now knowing all the things that you went through, now do you look at the definition of success differently?
Yeah, I think so. I think knowing yourself is a huge part of it. And because then you can be more intrinsically motivated, and it's not based on what society tells you success is supposed to be, or, your friends or your family or anyone that's not you tells you what success looks like. And so I think knowing yourself and knowing your values and the ins and outs of how you work and what fuels you, that is how you define your success.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And like you said before, you thought it was like climbing the ladder. But now I'm like, you're running your own business, so you're at the top of the ladder. So where do you go from here? But there's lots of places you can go, and it looks very different. So, was there anything that you wanted to share that you think we maybe missed? If not, is there like a message that you want to leave our listeners with?
I think, yeah, I just would like to leave a message I know that some people as well, like you say, are hesitant to go to the doctor, or maybe hesitant to investigate or get a diagnosis in something because they think it might, define. Are you okay? You have a tickle in your throat.
Yep.
It might define. It might change their perception of themselves. But I think it's a good thing to have a perception of yourself that's maybe more accurate, at least more, I don't know, maybe more comprehensive, or just in depth a bit more. And it doesn't mean that you have to then define yourself by a label, or you have to then go down a certain path because, well, now I'm called this, so I'm going to go down this path. I think it's just really valuable to understand nobody else can understand you like you do. And so in whatever way, shape, or form, whether diagnosis is accessible to you or not, because it's often not, even just listening to others and seeing and just finding what resonates with you, and then trying to understand your kind of, it's like a business plan, like your
For you.
why, and what's your why and what are your values, and that kind of helps to guide you.
Well, I think like your experience very much speaks to the fact of like going down this really helped you achieve those goals. You might have ended up maybe burnt out and left the industry and been doing something different. But because you tapped into these things and figured out, like more of who you are and your core values, beliefs, the way your brain works, all that kind of stuff, it really helped you to go down the path that you were meant to go down. And I think if we ignore that because we are, like you said, scared of the labels and what that might mean, I say like embrace it. A label is a label. Who cares what it says? Doesn't mean you have to live a certain life. I'm like, my label was a physical disability, and I feel like I've grown up my whole life being like, yeah, I'm in a wheelchair, but I'll figure it out. It didn't define who I am, but it did help me, like, shape me as a person.
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
that's how you get to be whatever success looks for you, to achieve those goals, reach dreams that you didn't think you could reach. So
Definitely.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so glad that you applied to be a guest. I know you found me on Facebook. I'm just like so excited to meet so many different people and have them share their stories, because I think even if we just reach one other woman who is struggling with maybe extreme fatigue or in the construction industry, that's feeling the same feelings of being different and undermined and stuff, I'm sure that they're going to get some inspiration from this. And yeah, if people want to find you, or can you share where they can find you on social media, website, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the company website's probably the best place to find me. It's squadlife.ca. That's SQUADLIFE.ca, and that connects to the different social media pages, and they're able to reach out to me through there. So
perfect, awesome. Well, thanks again. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll be going to check out Squad Life myself, so you might get a phone call from me.
good.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Can You Even podcast. I hope you're walking away feeling inspired, empowered, and ready to tackle your own You Can moments. If you loved this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and review the show. It helps me reach more people who need a little extra You Can energy in their lives. And hey, if you have a story to share, I'd love to hear it. Head to itsmecandice.com/podcast to apply to be a guest on the show. Until next time, remember, no matter what life throws your way, you can.